Welcome everybody. Today we're talking about, has the workplace become a melting pot? Really sorry that we couldn't do this live. We had a few technical issues, as Rihanna told you earlier. But we're here finally, and welcome to the session, and welcome Anna.
Yes, so today we have with us Anna Sargentson, and Anna's with Inclusive Recruiting. And I think I will leave the honor to Anna to introduce herself, which will do a much more better job than me. So Anna, if you'd like to give us some background about yourself and the company you work for before we take the session further.
Great. Well, thank you both for inviting me here today. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm one of the co-founders of Inclusive Recruiting. We set up 6 years ago nearly now. We are a recruitment business that has two hats. We very much set up to focus on providing diversity within the recruitment industry, and very much pride ourselves on always providing diverse shortlists to our clients and challenging our clients and challenging the status quo of the current recruitment market. And then we quickly realised that more work needed to be done and launched our workshops division 18 months ago now to work directly with organisations to tailor their internal recruitment process and the challenges that they face.
Okay, sounds interesting. And I guess, you know, what some of the questions we're going to ask you today, we'll get some more insight in terms of what you do as a business and how you apply that within your business. I think maybe just to kick off with, you know, organizations are growing. If you look at the makeup of organizations, people from different race, culture, backgrounds, different countries, I see, as our topic said, you know, has the workplace become a melting pot? I see this whole thing as a melting pot. So if one looks at organizations, how would you describe a multicultural organization?
For me and for us, I think a truly multicultural organization is having that diversity across all levels and all departments. It's ensuring that it's throughout the organization. It's not just in one space, one division, one geographical location. For an organization to be truly multicultural, it's got to be embedded throughout. Very often we can see organizations who shout and promote their diverse workforce and increasing diversity, but when you look into that, it's very much at the lower level, or it's in one specific area or location. And that doesn't demonstrate a truly multicultural organization.
Okay. And maybe just another question linked to that, because like you said, looking at the levels, and when you look at appointments taking place, it's more at the junior levels and the senior levels. And there's something that, you know, a question I posed to Alison earlier on, and maybe you can assist us with this dilemma. When we talk about diversity, we tend to look only at race and gender. And how do we open it up in terms of looking at, is it people with disabilities?
Yes.
And it's wider than just race, gender, and disability. You've got transgender within, happening within society these days as well. So how do we include all of that?
Well, again, I think tying it back to that multicultural organisation, as you say, it's about having everybody represented there, creating that culture where people can feel they can be truly valued and respected, regardless of their race, their gender, their background, their education level, their culture, their religion. There's so many layers that make up an individual that we've got to make sure that companies create a culture and processes to get that culture that welcome, respect and value all those differences that come together. As you rightly say, there's a lot of work being done focused on the gender pay gap. We all know about that, and getting women back into work. And indeed, it's one of our key focuses as well, of the amount of senior talent that is lost because they've had a career break. But it is so much wider than that. Even in that space, gender itself, you can't just put women on one side and, as you say, men on the other. There's a whole other group of individuals there who don't associate themselves with male or female. But likewise, one woman's experience is not the same as another woman's. And where I think organisations start to face issues is they create a process to attract more women back into work, for example, and then think, right, that's our box that's going to attract women. But actually, there's a very wide range of different needs, aspirations, experiences in that pool of women that need to be addressed if you're truly going to try and attract more women. It's not just the white middle class woman who's had some time out to have a child and wants to come back to work.
So I guess what I hear you saying is it's not just about the high level diversity topics that we talk about race and gender, but it's as much about diversity of different personality types and different skill sets. So a diverse workforce is all of those things that actually give you the depth and breadth of the different experiences to make up the team.
Absolutely, yes, because you can have, and as you say, the key things that are always focused on and spoken about, and the most events are held around, is gender and race. There's more coming up about disability now, but that's still very much an afterthought to a lot of people. And even in the disability space, it tends to be focused on visible disability. You know, there's a lot of individuals who have different needs that might not need to be in a wheelchair, or they might not be able, you know, physically to see them come into the office and think, right, they have an obvious disability. And they're overlooked time and time again in the recruitment process, either in an office environment and how it's set up, the recruitment process and the steps they're expected to go through that can be very challenging for some people. So it is taking the time and the effort, and I think that's one of the key factors of anything to do with diversity and inclusion. Is there's no quick fix, there's no shortcut, there's no quick stick a plaster on that and that's it, we've done it, we're wonderful. It takes a long time, and it's not going to happen in a month, 6 months, 6 years. There'll be things that we're starting to do now that future generations will benefit from before we do, but it's putting in that time and commitment and accountability to make sure that you really do take into account everybody's need. There's often a saying of, you can't possibly do everything for everybody, but I think you can. It's just going to take a long time, and it's going to be harder work. It's going to mean there'll be some very difficult conversations. There'll be people that feel threatened or pushed out, or that they're having their role or position threatened for the first time, or there's new things coming into play that they don't necessarily agree with. But if you're truly committed to it, then absolutely it can be done, but you have to be prepared to put that time in and educate yourself along the way as well.
With all of that in mind, then, what's your advice to employers about how to incorporate diversity into the workplace? One of the things that I hear people say is that positive discrimination isn't a good thing, because they feel if they're Mr. or Mrs. Standard, then they feel that they're not getting the equal opportunities for the jobs if an employer is trying to diversify the workplace. So how do you balance those two things together? What's your advice for the employer?
And it's an interesting one, that, because I think it's something that crops up in our workshops when we're working with clients directly on this of, well, are you saying that we shouldn't ever hire white middle class men? And it's like, of course we're not saying that. We're not about to start saying that you discount a certain group or a certain profile of individual. But it is very much about creating that process where it is more about equity than equality. And there's a fantastic image, and I can't show it to you now, where it explains that perfectly, in terms of we focus a lot of time on making things equal and fair for everybody, including the recruitment process. But it isn't equal. The world isn't equal, and the recruitment process isn't equal either. So the one that a company is rewriting and pulling together to attract that diverse talent also shouldn't be equal, because you can have a candidate who has certain disabilities, and we've worked with clients where their application process is 3 steps longer because of the additional measures they need to put in place for these candidates. But actually, you're just making that process so much harder already. So that candidate's already having to do 3 extra steps just to get to the same point as that other individual who has no disability. So it really is about accepting that you have to sometimes put in effort and bring people forward a couple of steps to make sure that actually we're all at the same starting point. It doesn't mean hiring someone based on their skin colour or hiring someone because they have a disability, and we can then promote that on our website and say, tick, we've done that, we've increased our diversity, and we've got a disabled person in the office. It is about ensuring that those candidates can have a fair and equal chance as everybody else to get through that process, and have the equal opportunity to get that role at the end of it, and not be made to feel that they've required a lot more effort to get them there. The effort should be on the employer, not the individual. I think that's key. So there's a whole host of ways that organisations can increase their diversity, and obviously that starts hugely with how they hire, and stop hiring the same people, the same profile, from the same pool, from the same job advert, from the same specification, the same education requirements. You're going to keep getting that same person. It's not rocket science. So again, it's taking the time to really rip that process apart, which again, it can be the last thing on people's minds. I haven't got time for that. We've got a need. Someone's handed their notice in. I need that job filled quickly. Here's the advert, post it out where we always do, and there we go, we get what we've always got. So it's taking that time to say, right, we're going to stop here, and actually we're going to rewrite it, reword it. What have we got in there that's putting people off? Do we really need that level of education? Do they have to have come from a Russell Group university? If so, why? Do they have to, be able to do certain key parts of the role? Can we offer flexible working? And if so, what does that look like? Is there a job share option? What have we got in here that would make a candidate with any form of disability want to apply for this job? And what's our interview process? Who's interviewing these candidates? Is it the same panel time and time again? Is there any representation in there of other individuals, so people can come in and see someone who resembles them, who they can relate to? And look at that whole process, and be really critical and pull it apart, and be prepared to put the effort in to rebuild that as a first point of call to start attracting the more diverse candidates. I think it's also, as we touched on before, really important not to just focus on one demographic. So you can see a lot of companies say, right, we're having a big push on getting women back, or increasing the number of BAME candidates coming into our organisation. If you're being truly inclusive, you want to attract everybody. It's that message of, actually, we want the best person for this role, and it doesn't matter what your background is, but we recognise that for some individuals, we need to put more effort in to make us an attractive employer to come and work with, because right now our messaging isn't perhaps giving off that message.
You used a little acronym there, BAME candidates. Can you just explain what that is?
Yes, sorry. So Black, Asian, Minority, Ethnics. So again, it's one that companies often put out there and promote and say, look, we've got this network, or we're having a real drive on increasing the number of BAME candidates that we hire. But again, it's within that community, there's a whole host of different individuals. You can't put everyone in one group. That's where it becomes, again, it's never going to move forwards, because you're just putting everyone in the same group and tarring them with the same brush and assuming they're all the same. My experience as a white woman is completely different to another white woman down the road and who lives in London, Scotland. It's having that mindset of not just focusing on one demographic, again, which is harder and takes time.
Yeah, I agree fully. I mean, we spoke about this, and I think we got introduced by Michael, who you know, and that's how I landed up coming to your morning workshop. And you know my passion around diversity and why it's close to my heart. And if I think back in terms of in South Africa, and this may be a question I'm going to ask, when they started looking at employment equity, what their home office, equivalent to ours, TDO, was to say companies need to put targets in place. So looking at in terms of when I've got my recruitment plan, X amount needs to be women, X amount needs to be Black, X amount needs to be Asian, disability, etc., from that perspective. And they had to report, and I might be talking under correction here, I don't know if it was every year or every 3 years, back to the home office to say, yes, we've met targets, no, we've not met targets, why we've not met targets, etc., to show that companies that are making the effort to do something about diversity within the workplace. Do you think that's an overkill, or is it something we in the UK need to look at?
I think it's happening in the UK. I think there's organisations out there who are very target driven, and I think it's a dangerous route to go down, because you can quickly, then you get the sort of tokenism. So you get we're doing this because we know we want to hit a quota, and if we hit that quota, we're going to get recognition, we're going to get praise, we're going to get great publicity, or whatever that incentive is that they're being driven to reach that target. I don't think it's always for the genuine the genuine cause. So I think with those targets, it's important that often if you look behind them, the retention rates are pretty shocking. So that's where we get an organisation who has a real drive and puts themselves out there and increases a specific, again, it's usually a specific targeted demographic that they're going after, a minority group. Then they can shout about it and celebrate. But 6 months, 12 months later, how many of those candidates are still there? And certainly how many of those candidates are progressing through the organisation at a senior level? And that's when it becomes apparent that it's a token gesture, because the culture isn't true behind it. That inclusion piece is not there. It is just, let's get the diversity for the website or for the annual report or statistics to put out there. But actually, if it was a truly inclusive and multicultural, diverse company, those individuals would stay, they would be progressing, more individuals would naturally be coming to that organisation. And I think that's where it's a token gesture rather than being done for the right reason.
Yeah. You mentioned a very important keyword, word retention. And I always say it's important. I describe it as being easy getting somebody in through the door, but how do you retain them? And especially from a diversity point of view. So how do we incorporate diversity into the workplace in terms of how do we retain individuals once we brought them into the workplace, and more from a diversity perspective?
Well, I think that is where it starts. At the minute the recruitment process has ended and that individual has been hired, you then go into that induction onboarding process. And again, how much time and effort an organisation has put into creating that process to be truly inclusive is a huge indicator of what it's going to be like ahead. And we've worked with a number of individuals who've had a terrible experience. You know, throughout the recruitment process, it's been fantastic. All the right noise has been made, all the right conversations have been had. But when they joined, they've quickly realised that there's no real culture of inclusive, behaviours happening in the organisation, and they very quickly feel alienated, or their views and values aren't respected, or simple things to change that just don't happen, and it just really speaks volumes about that culture not being there. So I think the first step is putting as much time and effort into your induction onboarding process, and then making sure that you're creating that culture where everybody feels valued, respected, and able to speak freely. Every opinion is invited to the table, and to have an opinion and a view on what happens with a particular problem or where the business is going. Whatever department they're in, it's important that their voice is heard and valued, and the organisation recognises that by getting all those different views, they're going to get the best answer. They're going to get the answer of people outside who are buying or using their product, whatever that is, not just the people sat around the boardroom who are doing what they've always done. So that culture of having a voice and being able to use it and being respected and feel that your opinion is valued and worthwhile and will be taken on board, rather than that's not the way we normally go, so just keep quiet and stay in the corner, I think is a key thing there as well.
That's a really good point about valuing differences. And you also mentioned about flexible working earlier. So what sort of things can companies have in place, or what should they have in place to actually value differences? And what are employees actually looking at from that perspective? And what are the external people looking at a company, deciding who to buy from? What sort of things are they looking for that the company would be doing?
Yeah, well, and I think just on that note as well, externally, you know, organisations must remember that every future potential employer is researching them before they even apply. So if a company is not getting the number of diverse candidates even applying in the first place, which is often one of the biggest questions we get asked, it's not we can't get them through the door, we can't even get them to apply in the first place. We are just getting the same cardboard cutout of applications. So it's looking at, again, what's your messaging, what are you doing, what events are you holding, what's on your website, what's on your Twitter feed, what's going on, you know, and individuals can quickly tell if that's authentic and true, or if it's just, again, another token gesture of, oh, we're jumping on this week because it's a specific week celebrating something, so we're going to go all out, and then we never mention it again all year, or we hold one event a year in line with that for the calendar, but aside from that, it's forgotten. You know, what are your anti-bullying policies on what are your policies that are available to be seen on your website about how, you know, your culture is in the workplace and how people are treated and expected to be treated. So from an external point of view, it's critical, like you say, not just customers but future employees. Certainly, I think nowadays it's all out there for everybody to see. There is nowhere to hide, and it's very easy to see the companies that are being genuine and those who are just, no matter how big their budgets are, you know, it's still easy to put on a great show, but you can see through it that it's not really embedded in the organisation. I think it comes back to, again, that communication piece is critical. So make sure that you build this culture of communication to make sure that whatever your background, and importantly, as we said earlier, it's not just, are you male or female? Are you, you know, what colour is your skin? It's so much more than that. What's your, you know, life experience? What's your education? What's your socioeconomic background? Your religion? There's a whole host, and it's making sure that people feel they have a voice that is respected and valued, regardless of that, you know, where they've come from, what they look like. You could have two people who on paper have exactly the same background, they maybe the same race, gender, religion, but they could look completely different, you know, just different dress sense, different. We've got to get over this thing of we create one normative group, and if you stray out of that, then you're the, you know, you're the wild child, you're the one that's a bit strange or a bit left field. It's like, value everybody brings something different, and who's in that position where they can be the one to say that's not right, or that's normal, or that's not normal. Make sure that we really appreciate the different contributions. So again, don't just ask for them but then not listen to them or act on them. Make sure that when you are having these open forums and getting people to contribute, that you then implement that, you take action, you know, ask individuals, what can we do as an organisation to, you know, be more inclusive. Don't try and sit, you know, again, just three people at the top think, well, we'll do this. Use the people, use your team around you, and admit what you don't know. You know, nobody knows it all. So again, there's no shame in saying that you want to learn and you need to improve. We have to if we're going to get better, and understand what's really needed.
I think what you mentioned is very critical in terms of ask, you know, and ask others for their opinion and their input. And And I know within a bigger corporate organization, it's easier because you've got the bandwidth of people. But working with smaller organizations, two arguments from their side. One, I'm a small business. This doesn't take up too much time. How do I implement this within my business? And then secondly, how do I incorporate this if I don't yet have a diverse workforce? So what would be practical examples you can give specifically for small businesses that they can implement as quick wins?
I think the first thing is admitting that they recognise they need to improve. And again, it's not falling into that trap of quickly going out there and hiring someone who will be their spokesperson, because quite often we see that as well, where you can have individuals who are hired and then they're literally wheeled out onto all their social media channels, and it's every time we've got a video to do or every time we've got a post to go out, we use that same person because that's showing that we're diverse. So it's a balance, between asking people and making sure that you're not putting the onus on those individuals to educate you all the time and tell you what to do. You've got to go out there and find it yourself. So yes, it takes time, and there is no shortcut around that. And I think if someone's not prepared to invest any time in it whatsoever, then they're not really committed to doing it properly in the first place, no matter what size your business. So you can always get yourself out there and go to other networks, put yourself in a situation that maybe you feel slightly uncomfortable in, where you're a minority. Start to understand how that feels. Many of us have never experienced that, where you've gone in a room and nobody else looks like you. So if that's the case, put yourself in that situation, expand your networks, and educate yourself as you go. And you can always get external support to help you next time you're doing a different piece of work, or you're doing a new hire, or you're doing something different with your website. Get an expert in to come and help you, who can say, right, this is the way you need to go to make sure that you're going to attract the talent, or you're giving off the right marketing message, or you're understanding what their vision is. But don't expect it to be an overnight instant transformation.
What are the challenges with things like that? If you think about the different generations, we talk about boomers and Generation X, Generation Y, millennials, all of those sorts of things. How do the expectations differ? How do the packages that employers offer, are they meeting the mark? We're talking about communication as well. All of those things into the melting pot. How do you balance that against the different generations and their different ways of being? What are the challenges?
And again, I think that's just another element of diversity, isn't it? The different demographics. We're, for the first time, we're in a situation where we've got 5 different generations in the workforce potentially. So you could have an organisation who's got one end of the spectrum just coming in, at sort of 18, 19, and someone who's approaching 70 and has no intention of stopping anytime soon, and everyone in between. So again, there's going to be some clashes, there's going to be a lot of difference of opinion, a lot of disagreements, but also a huge opportunity for organisations to really make that a unique plus point for their business. Think of all the different perceptions, different ideas, different lived experiences, views that, again, you can gain on to put your business, service, product, whatever it is, out there to reach the market. Unless you're specifically targeting a certain age group and you're not interested in anybody else, then why wouldn't you want that mix? There are obviously, there's sort of key labels that are giving out for the different generations, and there's a lot of information out there where you can say, right, well, Gen Z look like this, baby boomers do this. And again, you've got to be careful of not just putting everyone into that box, but it's very well known. The generations coming up are obviously, they've grown up in a connected world since they were tiny. They're used to having multiple things on the go at once. I know we were with a client last year, and they said, one guy who was a manager said, I couldn't understand how this individual had like 6 devices on their desktop at once. You've got phones, iPads, laptops, and they're working and they're doing it, and it's just normal to them. You know, to other generations, that's completely alien and stressful, and how on earth are you getting that done? But it's respecting each other's differences again, and learning from each other. There's a lot to be learned from different generations. You know, that younger generations can learn a lot from those older, and vice versa. And it's important that, again, the communication is put in place where people feel safe to say what they feel, and what they find difficult or confusing or offensive, because we all have different ideas of what's acceptable and what's not. And
with the retirement age going up, and people being expected to potentially work for a lot longer, do you think companies are generally gearing up for an older workforce later in life, and also a workforce that goes from sort of younger to much, much older, and how that's going to impact them? I mean, one of the things, because I specialise in wellbeing, one of the things that occurs to me is, well, what are companies doing to help their employees be well into their older age, that they can work? And I do some work in the construction space where, you know, people are really going to struggle to work until they're in their 70s, because the work is so physically demanding. In an office space, it's not quite as so much of a problem, because it's not so physically demanding. So what sort of challenges is that bringing in when you're talking about diversity and how companies are thinking to the future?
I think the recognition of an aging workforce is still relatively new at the moment. I don't think it's top of the list for men. I think it's almost going to be one of these things that comes up and starts biting people when they realise, actually, look at the number of individuals we've got working here that are over 65, and we don't want to lose them, or they've no intention of leaving any time soon. So I think it's one that, as I said, there's such a big focus on the moment about race and gender. I do think age is down that list of priorities for people, because it's not being included in that whole mix. And it's another critical layer of all of us. We're all an age. There's no getting away from that. So and again, it's really important that companies don't just assume because someone is a certain age that they want to do or don't want to do a specific thing. Oh, you're nearly 65, you must want to stop working, so therefore I'm going to start looking for your replacement, when actually that person wants to go for another 8 years, and vice versa. Someone younger, you know, generations coming through now don't see things as a job for life. You know, they want somewhere for a few years. It's really important that they feel that their role has a purpose and it's doing some good, and there's that sustainability issue tied around it, and now as a main motivator. And the work-life balance phrase is used a lot more, because people don't want to work 70 hours a week for, you know, till the end of their days. So I think it is going to be a challenge, but as you mentioned, Alison, the well-being piece is absolutely critical. And again, for all generations, you know, it's so widely known about the mental health issue of the youth today and the younger generations. And it's, you know, it's a huge concern if employers start looking at what they're going to lose from time for people having time off for stress or sickness or mental health issues. And again, when you're looking at building your culture and your recruitment process, you have to factor that in. You know, what is your culture like for someone who has had time off, who had mental health issues or a breakdown? How inclusive are you to someone like that getting back into the workforce, and what support network is there for them? So I think it's a huge area that's going to get louder and louder over the coming years. But I don't think many organisations are that prepared for it currently.
Yeah, I think diversity is something we can talk about forever.
Yes.
Use that word. But I'm conscious that you know, our viewers also have some work to do afterwards, and we have work to do afterwards. But I know we do have another session. We'll be touching on diversity, but from a different angle. And but I think before we close off today's session, I'd like to give you an opportunity just to let us viewers know, our viewers know, in terms of, you know, we spoke a lot about training, things that they can do. What is that you as an organization offer with regard to training? And, you know, is it open house? Is it in-house? What do you offer where they can go to in terms of saying, yes, I need help, but I need somebody to show me the ropes?
Yeah, okay. So we offer a suite of different training workshops. They're full-day programs, and we tend to go in-house to organisations so we can tailor it specifically to their sector and their current state, because what we don't want to do is suggest that there's a one-size-fits-all and here's a template, and if everybody does that, you'll have a fantastic inclusive recruitment process or induction onboarding. So we have 3 key workshops, which are inclusive recruitment, which is all about your own internal process, everything from how you attract talent, your adverts, where you advertise, your interviews, your panel, really pulling apart that process and then helping and giving up companies the tools to rebuild it so it's inclusive throughout. We then go on to the induction onboarding piece, because as we said, there's no point doing this wonderful recruitment process if you're not going to follow it through afterwards with the induction onboarding piece and make sure that you're retaining your talent. And then inclusive leadership, because what we can find is individuals who are not used to managing diverse teams can be another key reason why they don't have good retention rates. If those individuals don't feel that culture is there, they're not being valued, they've not got that genuine opportunity to progress and contribute to that organisation, why would they stay? So there are 3 sort of inclusive recruiting suites, and then we do a variety of different workshops around managing difficult conversations. We do a HR for non-HR managers, and we also do what we sort of class as initial audit on a company. So to help them establish where to start, because it doesn't necessarily start with your recruitment process. For some companies, we've started with their leadership team, because until you've got that right, there's no point changing all your processes if the leadership team aren't on board and clear of their part to play. And our workshops, they're full days, they're intense, but they're very interactive. The first halves are very much about, you know, having the difficult conversations. There's, you know, exercises we do to really put people in situations they've not been in before and make them think differently and try to understand how other individuals may feel in certain situations. And then the second half is really about giving companies that toolkit that they can take away. Not just let's talk about it and how important it is, let's make sure that you leave here and know what to do and who's accountable.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you everybody for listening, and we hope you'll watch this video at a later date and put your comments in the field, and one of us or Anna will be able to respond to you directly with any questions that you might have. We hope that's given you some food for thought and that you found the discussion interesting, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
Thank you, Anna, and we'll chat to you again later on another topic.
Thank you very much. Bye.